listening to the Astral Hour. I'm your host, Astral Meadow. Join me as we take a glimpse into the mysterious. Welcome, everyone. Today, I'm joined with my lovely friend, Ashley White. She is a yoga instructor and a peri-steam facilitator. Her personal healing journey and experiences have inspired her to learn and share these wonderful practices with others. Her desire is to empower women through education about their cycles and the sacred tradition of Yoni steaming. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for coming out. I've been really looking forward to this episode with you and getting to know you a little more. So, could you share with us a little about yourself and how you became a peri-steam facilitator?
Yes. So I started my healing journey back in 2011. I discovered yoga. I had just moved home from Nashville, and I used yoga as a tool to heal from an abusive relationship and from drug addiction. And I didn't want to do like a 12-step thing. That really didn't resonate with me. But there was something about yoga. I could feel the healing connection between my mind and my body. So I continued practicing yoga for several years. And then in 2017, I kind of had this aha moment, like, if yoga can do this for me, then yoga can do this for everybody. And I wanted to share my experience and be able to help other people who are in a similar situation as me, or maybe not, just be able to share yoga and the power that it has and the impact that it has had in my life. And I went on to do the same with Reiki and meditation, and it seems like I integrate some type of practice in my life, and it has a profound effect, and then I want to learn how to do it so I can share it with other people. So steaming was pretty much exactly the same. I started steaming back in 2018. I had always had very painful periods. My entire life. I was put on hormonal birth control pills when I was in high school to deal with the pain and the other symptoms, being really heavy, being like really physically sick during my period. And it got to a point where I was like, I got to do something. In 2018, I had an IUD and I was still miserable. I was like, this is supposed to be helpful.
Right.
It was not helpful. So the issues that I was having, full disclosure, I was having some yucky brown spotting like a couple days before my period, and I would have horrible cramps, and then I would have a really painful period that lasted 4 or 5 days, and then I would have 4 or 5 more days of yucky brown spotting with awful cramps. I was like, there's got to be a better way.
Right.
And I just stumbled upon this mutual friend who was offering vaginal steaming, Yoni steaming. And I was like, I'm going to try this. It's worth a shot. What's the worst that could happen? Right. It not work compared to hormonal birth control. So, I had a consult with her, and she shipped me some herbs. She lives in Chattanooga, and I steamed, and my very next cycle, my cramps were gone.
Wow.
My very next cycle was 4 days of fresh red blood, no yucky brown spotting, no horrible PMS symptoms, like none of that stuff. So I was like, I got to do this. I have to do this. So I integrated it and made it a part of my monthly cycle. 2 or 3 days before my period, 2 or 3 days after my period, I would steam. Just to maintain those benefits. And then eventually I was like, well, if I'm doing this, like, I don't really need the IUD to help manage my symptoms anymore. I can just track my cycle.
Right.
And so I had that removed, and then I felt like steaming was really helpful to balance out my natural hormones.
Right.
When the artificial was removed.
Mm-hmm.
So after that, I would tell my friends, like, they would talk about how horrible their cycle was. I was like, oh, you got to try this thing.
Right.
You kind of like, you know, when you see a movie and you're just like, oh, you have to do this. It's totally cool. And eventually I was like, you know what? I really need to just figure out how to share this with other people. So I did some research and found a program and did a lot of studying, and now I'm a peri-steam facilitator.
That's awesome. Yeah, when you're talking about like birth control and stuff, I was put on birth control like as soon as my period started, and you know, yeah, it might have helped in some ways, but I definitely feel like it kind of blocked things, like maybe energetically, and so there was like, it might have helped in this way, but it was like creating a bigger issue like underneath.
Absolutely.
And I don't know like how it affects the sacral center even, you know, so like I don't know energetically what it was doing. But it took a while, like after, well, I guess before I got pregnant with my son, I stopped taking birth control, and then I haven't taken any since. And it was hard, you know, like getting things back in check. And I really wish I would have known about this at the time, because, you know, it makes sense that you would almost want to do like a detox.
Yeah.
After 10 years of using birth control, you know.
Yeah. There was a lot of work that I had to do, you know, for my body to get rid of those hormones,
Right.
the artificial ones, and like get right back on track. You know, it was a lot of nutrition. It was a lot of yoga. It was a lot of steaming. But now, you know, my cycle is pretty much like clockwork. So
That's amazing. I haven't had like a full cycle since we steamed, but I noticed like just with the ovulation that it was so much easier, and I was like less cranky, and the libido went up, and I was like looking at my calendar and I was like, I'm ovulating. I should be in a really bad mood right now.
yeah.
But it was actually the opposite. And I was like, what is going on? My husband was like, I bet it was that Yoni steam. So like he actually picked up on it. And I was like, yeah, you're right. It probably was. It's like it opened up something. Like I'm not even fully aware of what it did, but I know herbs are so good for us, like just our energy bodies. So I don't know. It would be cool to like, if you could see the energetics of what's really happening, like on the full spectrum.
Oh, yeah.
That would be so cool. Like get your aura photographed after a Yoni steam, like see if it like turns into rainbows or something. I'd love to do that. So, could you define the word Yoni for us and tell us where this term originated?
Yeah. Yoni comes from Sanskrit, and there are a vast amount of definitions for Yoni. You can take it like really, really deep and heavy. But basically it means womb space or vagina or sacred space or place of birth or creation. So the way that I personally interpret that is sacred space. That's what resonates with me the most. Vagina is Latin for sword sheath.
Oh.
So,
you know, I never even thought to look that up. That's cool.
Yeah.
Sword sheath.
So, I mean, can we have our own body part named for us and not for what it does for a man?
Yes.
Love my men's. I do.
Right.
But anyway, so yeah, that's where it comes from. So your yoni is a place of both physical and energetic creation. And I believe that it is a great source of connection to the divine feminine.
Totally. I agree with all that. And I was thinking about it. I don't know if you know anything about human design, but I'm a generator, and generators pull all of the energy in through their sacral chakra. Like, that's the center that's open for them. And so, like, basically every person I meet, like, the part of my aura that connects with them is the sacral part of myself. So I feel like this has been like a profound discovery for me, because I feel like I do cramp. I have issues there, and I feel like it's because I have such an intense, overwhelming amount of stimulation. I'm also an artist, and so when I create, it comes in from there. And then that's also like all the stuff I'm absorbing from the world, because that's the open center in my body. So it might be like not as exciting for someone else, but for me, like, just that little bit of time I've made, like, to give this space to, like, think about it as sacred, and to cleanse it, right? Yes. Because that's a lot of energy coming in. It needs to be cleansed and honored.
Yes, that was the very first word that came to mind as you were speaking, is it's just a form of cleansing all of the stuff that is hanging out in that space, both physically and energetically.
Right. Yes. And before this, I should have thought about it more, but I just haven't. I guess I just sort of had detached from that. Yeah. And I don't know why. I was trying to think about, like, why is there, like, shame around yonis? But I couldn't quite think about it, like, in this lifetime. But I had this past life where I was basically like a midwife, and I watched a lot of, like, birth trauma, because this was like Victorian era, and I was actually an herbalist, and and in that lifetime I was basically celibate, and it was because I couldn't have children and then take care of these other women, because then I'd have to take care of my children. So in this lifetime, even though I lived in with a family that was promiscuous, openly sexual, I should have been more open, but I was, like, super closed off sexually. And it was weird, because most kids are, like, rebellious and, like, they're all about, but I was the opposite. I was very conservative, and there was, like, the shame and humiliation and all that. Like, I remember not wanting to even go to the OBGYN and just being like, I can't believe I have to do this. But I felt like some of it was past life trauma, you know, and I'm still to this day healing it. And I feel like something about the Yoni steam, it was like I finally acknowledged that maybe there was something going on there energetically, and it released more than just, you know, like, this past month's cycle. It was, like, really deep, like, almost into past lives deep, which is interesting to think about.
I totally get that. For me, you know, I always felt like my period was dirty. Like, I was dirty, and it was something to be ashamed of, you know, like in high school, you know, shoving the tampon up your sleeve before you go to the bathroom, because heaven forbid anybody know that you're on your period, and you just carry that with you. And there's nothing to be ashamed of. This is the beauty of how our bodies work and function. We function on the lunar cycle. And as women, we have phases in our monthly cycle that correlate with that. And to finally accept that, you know, I'm not gross and dirty because I bleed once a month. You know, that was powerful for me. So. Right.
To just accept this feminine aspect of you. It's like, and in other cultures, it's so celebrated. And
it is. Red tent.
Right. We've got that. And then just sex in general was sacred. You know, you've got, like, the Kama Sutra and these other religions that, you know, don't necessarily, like, shun pleasure or feminine nature. You know, they, like, have goddesses, and, you know, there's, like, yonis on the sacred walls and stuff. Like, it's different, you know, and I'm not exactly sure when it shifted to where we just, like, pretend like sex doesn't exist, and we just try to completely avoid it altogether, and, like, and then, like, to pretend we don't even have sex organs, you know, unless they're in use, and then, like, to block it out again. It's like we, as a culture, we have this weird connection to our sacral center. But, you know, that's part of, like, the lower half of the energy body, and it's almost like important to be like, yeah, root chakra for grounding, but the sacral center is very connected to the root chakra. They're like right up on you, you know, like when you're steaming, you're probably dealing with the root too in a way, right? Maybe.
Absolutely.
So if you're not grounded, I mean, it just, what are you doing in life? You're just all over the place. So I feel like it took our power away. Like when these religions and this, whoever came in and decided to disconnect us from half of ourselves, you know, it's almost angering to think about like how we just allowed that to happen. But I feel like our generation is really waking up to that. And we're like, no, this is toxic. Like, I was born with a vagina. This is okay. Like, this isn't a bad thing. You're like, having an arm's not a bad thing. Like it's just a part of our body. And I just love that people are slowly, like, shattering that. Like, the moms are, like, celebrating their daughter's cycles and, like, just stripping away any of the weird taboo of, like, you should be embarrassed about this, you know. And even Disney's talking about it now, you know, with the red panda things. So, what are some cultures that practice yoni steaming, and what is some of the history behind it?
So, yoni steaming has been around since there have been midwives. So, you know, I don't know, however long midwives have been delivering babies. So, like thousands of years. It's been practiced all over the world in some form or fashion. The issue with, you know, investigating and trying to research, you know, the history in a variety of cultures is it's called different things.
Okay.
So there's, you know, vaginal steaming. In South Korea, they call it a hip bath. Some cultures call it fumigation, and don't actually, because they just burn the herbs and then direct the smoke. So it's like a dry steam because there's no water.
Okay.
But yeah, there's tons of cultures that do it. Indigenous cultures, South Korea, Haiti, Guatemala, Vietnam, the Polynesian Islands, several countries in Africa. So typically this knowledge of vaginal steaming was passed down, you know, generationally from the midwives, from the moms to the daughters and stuff like that. It was particularly used postpartum by midwives. It has huge benefits after childbirth. And then about 200 years ago, doctors started delivering babies. And they wouldn't allow women to go to medical school. You've got colonization and slavery where these generational families are broken up. And so these practices fall to the wayside. You've got prejudice against women to where women's wisdom is not valued. You know, modern medicine is seen as better than folk medicine just because it's modern.
Right.
And, you know, even religion, you'll have some religious sects that think that the use of herbs is some form of evil and will dissuade against that whenever they're, you know, doing their missions and stuff. So it really diminished the practice a lot. Right.
That's interesting. I mean, it doesn't surprise me, just what I know about like the medical industry. But I'm definitely happy that we have people like you out here educating women about this, you know, this sacred, ancient practice, because I think that we're ready for it. You know, I think so many women are realizing that maybe the birth control is affecting them in ways that they don't like, and that they want to take more control of their sacred space. They want to, you know, consciously choose like what goes in there, and, you know, like down to like what kind of, are you using condoms that have chemicals? Are your tampons, you know, like organic? Because if they're not, then the cotton is like sprayed with pesticides. And so many people are waking up to like, what am I putting in my body? Because like anything inside you is going to be absorbed.
Correct.
You know, like right just the way that the herbs are being absorbed. So I just feel like this steaming is cleansing out so much, you know,
Yeah.
where we've spent all those years just not even thinking about it, you know. I was even thinking about, ever since we steamed, I've put a lot more thought into it. But like I was taking a bath and I was like washing my hair and I was like, I feel like the soap is probably not good. So then I was like, I'm just going to start taking a bath, but then washing my hair, you know, in the shower. But I was like, you're literally absorbing it.
Yeah.
Right. So it's made me even more conscious of that. So
Yeah.
I really like it. It's been awesome.
Yeah.
What are some of the more common herbs used and what are their purposes?
Well, herbs have properties. And so whenever I create a formula, I use the properties of the herbs and try to balance based on somebody's individual needs. So there's herbs that have a cleansing property that's going to help with the stagnation and buildup. So that yucky spotting, you know, the cramping from where the uterus is trying to get rid of the gunk and the junk that's stuck to the uterine wall. There's blood tonic, which is a property where the herb nourishes the blood and provides nutrients because, you know, you are losing blood. You need to replenish those nutrients. There's herbs that are moisturizing, replenishing fluids in the tissues. There's herbs that are disinfecting. They tend to dry, like that damp, moist heat that we don't really want, and target unhealthy biomes. There's herbs that deodorize and help with digestion. So there's a tie between your reproductive health and your gut health. So, you know, I don't know if anybody's ever had the period poops before,
Right.
but you know, there's a connection there.
Right.
There's hemostatic, which is helping to prevent bleeding. So if you've got somebody that has a really short cycle, you want to, you know, slow down their monthly cycle. So that would be a herb for them. So like lavender. Lavender is in all of my formulas. It is antibacterial and anti-inflammatory, and it smells really awesome. That's important too. You want to have that beautiful aromatic sensation from your steam. I also use peppermint in all of my blends. It is a cooling herb. Helpful for people that have like hot flashes, especially like perimenopausal, postmenopausal women. It's also really helpful with cramps and stress relief. I use raspberry leaf as cleansing and a blood tonic. It also helps with balancing hormones and helping with cramps and pain relief as well. Calendula is a cleansing herb, also does some disinfecting and cooling properties as well. I use that a lot for menopausal issues and people who are prone to infections. Also people who have some stagnation, I use that too. Marshmallow root, that herb was in the blend that you used. It's moisturizing and cooling, but it's also helpful for libido, and it moistens the tissues.
Yeah.
So
It didn't go unnoticed.
yeah, mugwort is helpful for people with shorter periods. It helps regulate menstruation, and rose is another one that's in all my blends. It's cleansing. It's very nourishing to the blood. It's also mood enhancing, kind of makes you feel good. And it's also helpful for cramps and stagnations and infections.
Awesome. I love that. And I feel like this is all great for the Yoni, but just thinking about herbs in general, like getting that herb into your system, it could be helping you in other ways that like we're not even thinking about.
Of course.
Because lavender has like all sorts of other benefits and you're absorbing it into your bloodstream. So it's like, I don't need to drink my lavender tea tonight. I'll just add it to my Yoni steam.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I love that. So, can you share what a steaming session is like for those who may have never heard of it?
Yeah. So typically what we do is we have a conversation. I've got like an intake form that has some questions about, you know, your cycle, you know, what are things like, and we have a conversation about it. So I can figure out what herbal blend is going to work best for you and what type of steam protocol, I guess, would work best. And then from there, we pick a herbal blend and boil some water and steep it for 10 minutes. And then you place it underneath a seat or a stool and wrap up in blankets if you like, and hang out for 10 to 30 minutes, depending on your individual plan, and let the steam do its magic. I do have the option for some people to do either a guided meditation or some journaling if they want, if they choose to have a deeper experience. And that's optional.
Right. I really liked the meditation and then doing the mudra. I feel like that was probably one of the reasons it was more profound for me, was because it really like set it in, like, that this is important. This is not just happening right now. It's like I'm giving awareness to this space. And I don't know, it just made it seem more powerful for some reason. So it was like physical, but then it was mental because of the meditation.
Absolutely.
So,
and that's lovely. But every now and then I steam while I'm watching TV. So
right.
That's okay too.
Exactly. Yeah. I felt like as almost like an initiation into the ritual. Yeah. But I probably wouldn't necessarily do that every time. But I might. I don't know. I'll see.
It's all about balance.
For sure. Yeah. I feel like I've been on the edge of wanting to do Yoni steam. Like I've heard about it, but and then even after my pregnancy, my herbalist sent me herbs to steam, but like she didn't give me any instructions, and it was a pretty big bag, and I was like, I don't know how to do this. You know what I mean? So I just think it's awesome to have someone like you, even for our listeners that are at a distance, they can contact you, buy some herbs from you, pick your brain a little.
Absolutely.
Do the intake form. So even people that can't see you in person, like you could still help them.
Yeah. Virtual consults are absolutely a thing,
It just helps someone feel safe, because it is kind of, herbs in the wrong, measurements and stuff like that can kind of mess you up a little bit. And there's some fear there. Correct.
I mean, of course, with any practice, there are, safety precautions that you need to be aware of. I don't recommend, raiding your kitchen cabinet for all of the herbs and then just dumping them in a pot and then popping a squat,
Right. And they need to be sourced right. You want to make sure they're like organic, and yeah. And then just like, for me, it helped so much to just see your setup. So even though, we had the one session, we're kind of far away, I probably won't get to do it with you regularly. So I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to buy my own chair, which I did today. I'm really excited. But I feel confident because you worked with me and I watched you do it. And I'm like, I could do that. I can do that. And you like told me the portions, and I've done the intake form. I know my overall formula, unless something totally different happened, then we might change it. But I feel confident that just doing it regularly, that this would be good for me, where that was totally a fear, And like someone was like telling me, oh, just clean out your toilet or empty out your toilet. And you had said, well, there's, bacteria there. But like people, like no one told me that there was I should have known that, but I wasn't thinking that way.
And that's my personal opinion. Like some practitioners might feel differently, but I personally feel that your toilet is not a sacred space.
Exactly.
That there's germies there that may potentially get caught up in the steam and go where we don't want them.
Right.
That's my personal opinion.
Right. And I like that. Like as soon as you said that, I'm like, that's probably why I just didn't feel comfortable ever doing it. Because it does seem a little sacred, and the toilet, I don't know. It's just like my bathroom's nice and all, but it's not somewhere I just want to sit for 30 minutes and do Yoni mudras. So.
Yeah. But that's what I want. I want people to feel comfortable doing this on their own. I mean, of course, we'll work together, and I'm always open to conversations or answering questions or anything like that. But I just think that this is a beautiful practice for anyone to integrate in their life. And I just want to be able to help facilitate that.
I love it. I'm very excited to get all of my stuff. And I was surprised that it's not too expensive to get a chair on Amazon. And then it's like a little crock pot. And here I am thinking that it's going to be this big process. But like you're like, wrap up in a plate. I'm looking at all your stuff and I'm like, well, this doesn't have to be so complicated.
No, I mean, it's only as complicated as you make it.
Right.
Like, my very first steam seat was a plastic milk carton, a glass bowl, and a brand new out of the box toilet seat that I put on top of the milk carton and balanced precariously, because if I shifted to the left or the right, then the toilet seat would move. And I didn't want to fall in and land in the hot water. So
Right.
like it was great, but at the same time, like at the time I started, I was doing 10 minutes because I had an IED. It was like 10 minutes of perfect stillness.
Right.
It was like, this is great, but this is not great at the same time. So once I got an actual seat, I was like, oh, this is so much better.
Right. I saw that they had these like camping toilet seats on it, and I was like, well, that might work. But I was like, I could spend like $30 more and get the cool wooden one.
Yeah.
So I just did, because I feel like, I don't know, the wooden seems more sacred. Like, it's bringing in like nature.
Connection to the earth. Yeah.
Yeah. And not just, it doesn't look like a toilet either. I don't know.
Correct.
So,
Correct.
I was happy to spend a little bit more, because I am going to start doing this. I feel like I'm going to make a ritual out of it and just continue on the journey there. So, what are some of the benefits of regular yoni steaming, and how often would the average person be doing them for maintenance?
Well, I think it's just really a beautiful self-care practice, no matter what your individual reason for steaming is. If you have some type of issue with your cycle, or if you don't have a cycle, it's just a beautiful self-care practice. For me personally, my cycle is regular. I have 4 days of fresh red blood, no brown spotting, no cramps, no like nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, yucky stuff. None of that. My hormones were regulated pretty quickly after coming off hormonal birth control. I sleep better when I steam. It's a nice, relaxing spa time, kind of like a facial, but for your vagina.
Right.
And I connect to my divine feminine power that way. Other people who have frequent infections like BV or yeast infections, they may see a decrease in those. If someone has issues with dryness, they may see some improvement there and an increase in moisture in the tissues. People who have shorter periods may see that they become more regular. They have a more normal, close to a 28-day cycle. As far as like when to steam, I personally steam 2 days before my period, like each day before my period, and then the following 2 days after my period. If someone doesn't have a cycle, whether that be because of birth control or, just no longer menstruating, then you could do like a weekly steam instead. It's just kind of based on the individual person's needs.
So for me, my PMS symptoms start like clockwork about 7 days before my actual period. Do you think that I should start around that time?
You could do both.
Okay.
If you wanted to steam weekly.
Okay, so that's okay.
And yeah, that's totally okay.
I wasn't sure like how much is too much.
Would I recommend doing it every single day of the month? Probably not. And if you are doing it on a weekly basis, you could probably get away with doing just the day before and the day after your cycle. I mean, it's kind of a common sense thing.
Right. I feel like for maybe this first round of menstruation, that maybe I will do it at the 7-day before and maybe like 2 days before, just depending on if I'm still having symptoms. But I'm really interested to see how the PMS goes. Like, as I'm filling out this form, I'm like, yeah, my periods are regular. I'm fine. Everything's fine. And then I start thinking about it. And I'm like, it's not fine. Like, I get really emotional and definitely have some like tummy issues, and there are things, but I just was like, this is just how it is. You know, I'm going to suck it up and get through it. But I like dread it. Like I actually like sometimes will get depressed because I'm like, it's about my PMS cycle is about to hit. That's a week of me just laying around, you know, and I know that I need to honor that time, but I can't do that 2 whole weeks out of the month. So like I can treat like the cycle, like I can honor that, but like the PMS, I have a very hard time like appreciating it. And I'm trying to like change the way that I view it, because I don't know. I don't like it. I like hate it. It really is a bad thing. So that's 1 week out of every month that I like dread. So I'm like, if I could do something to balance that out, look at all this time that I would actually just be like living my life and not probably creating a worse imbalance just because of my thoughts about it. I know it's going to be bad. I know I'm going to be emotional. I know I'm going to be lethargic, you know? So I don't know. I've appreciated, or I'm excited to see how this changes the overall energy, even if it's just mental. Like maybe mentally I just look at it differently.
Yeah, well, I think it helps you tune into your body in a way where you can notice the patterns of those different phases of your cycle. So you notice how you feel, you know, right after your period. You notice how you feel when you're ovulating. You notice how you feel when you're in that premenstrual stage. And you notice how you feel when you're on your period. I feel like having an awareness of where those stages are and having an acceptance of how your body is in those stages is half the battle.
Right. And just honoring yourself during that. Like, I'm a woman. This is how my body works. And instead of just trying to pretend like I don't have this, like that I'm not going to have a period and just pushing through it, and instead of just allowing like rest or whatever, and just more self-love around that time.
Absolutely.
Or something.
Give yourself permission.
Yeah.
My partner knows that whenever I'm menstruating, I am spending 4 days in bed. I'm laying in bed. I'm watching TV. I'm watching all kinds of trash, Married at First Sight. You know, like, I don't know, like 90 Day Fiance. Whatever kind of brain candy, not mentally taxing stuff. Like I'm laying in bed. I'm resting. Right. I'm prioritizing that time for my body to release, both physically through menstruation and energetically, just letting go of the stuff that I don't need anymore this month.
Right. See, I do not do that, but I'm gonna look at it differently this month. I'm gonna approach it differently, and maybe just actually like plan a rest day and just not try to do so much. And just
planning is everything.
Right. Like, it's okay if I don't do the laundry for a couple of days.
Utilize the crock pot.
Right.
Utilize the Instant Pot. If the dishes are dirty, the dishes are dirty.
Right.
You know, sometimes your partner will do them for you if you ask nicely.
So I just feel like you came into my life at the perfect time, because like I was ready for this shift, but I wasn't aware, and I didn't even know you. But I was like, as I was thinking about it, I'm like, this is what I needed, you know, because I have other moon rituals. So this kind of is just like a bonus, but I've already been like honoring the moon phases, but yet somehow I forgot to include myself.
Your own moon phases.
Exactly.
Your own moon phases. Yes.
So I've been looking, you know, outside and realized maybe taking the ritual internally is important too. And like, how does the moon affect me, you know, and how is it affecting me in this feminine way? The moon is a very feminine, you know, heavenly body, but it's affecting all of us, but it does seem more geared towards the feminine.
It does. Women operate on the lunar cycle. We have a 30-day cycle. Men operate on the circadian cycle, the 24-hour cycle. And That's why we disagree sometimes.
Right. Totally. So, are there any other cycle rituals that you practice?
I mean, obviously prioritizing rest. Your body needs that rest because of the blood loss, and it also needs extra nutrients. So I definitely prioritize nutritious food, and I let myself eat a lot of it. Typically hot stuff, soups and things like that. I love my crock pot. I love my partner for cooking for me and doing dishes. Shout out to Jim. I like to meditate on releasing the stuff that I don't need anymore.
Right.
Whether that be, stuff that I'm stressed about, thoughts, feelings, emotions that I'm just ready to let go of to make space for what's next, for the next cycle.
Right. See, I've already been doing new moon releases, but it's like, it's all like mental, and it's just me writing them down, and I drink cacao and I meditate on it. But I feel like adding the steam in is cool because I'm like physically doing something. So it's like going to be this extra oomph. So I'm trying not to like give myself too many rituals, because I did an Akashic record reading and I was like, is there any new rituals I should add in? And they were like, it feels like you're doing too many. And I do, I don't want to get like crazy where I have to like wake up, do this thing every day, do that thing next. I don't want my whole life planned out. But I do think that this particular ritual is great because my body is going to I'm going to have a period no matter what. Like, it's a ritual that I can't really avoid because it's going to show its face at some point. So like, if I could just honor it, I feel like that's the best way.
And like, maybe you combine it together with something,
Right.
Maybe while you're steaming, you write down the things.
Right. And I could combine them.
Yes.
And I've even read that like chocolate is really good for PMS, that there's something maybe like magnesium or something about it. So I feel like the cacao would be great with the steam, during this PMS phase. So I feel like it would be the perfect way to add a little spice into
just
it.
Add the layers, like integrate the things together, and then just come up with this beautiful ceremony for yourself.
Right. I'm so excited for this, to do this like on my own now. So I'll have to give you an update on like my first steam. So let's see. How has this journey affected you personally?
Well, previously I had a very negative relationship with my menstrual cycle and my body. I have experienced some domestic abuse and some sexual trauma. And I feel like for me personally, being able to steam and have a time of appreciation and gratitude and really honor my sacred space, my source of creativity, my connection to the divine feminine. I feel like it really helped me continue to heal from those issues. I no longer dread my cycle. I no longer just like stare at the calendar and wonder, first of all, when it's coming.
Right.
I don't wonder when it's coming. And I'm not, miserable whenever it's coming. I don't have like 2 weeks of horribleness of spotting and cramping and pain and other yucky symptoms. I just have my 4 days, and then it's on to my new cycle.
Right.
It's like magic.
Right. I never even thought about it like helping maybe be a ritual to release sexual trauma. That's a good thing that I hadn't actually thought about, but
yeah. And I mean, that's just my personal experience.
Right. I feel like it's good though. Like, I feel like it would be a good suggestion for some people, especially if they've already processed it through therapy or something and they just want to do a ritual to actually symbolize, like, I'm
Yes.
releasing this. It's
Yes.
no longer a part of me, and just cleansing that sacral center out for
Yeah.
like new opportunities.
Absolutely. Creating space for something new. You know, like some other people who've experienced addiction, I have this disconnect between like my mind and my body from time to time. And of course, I continue to work on it. But, you know, like I can cognitively know all of the things. Like I can cognitively know that I am safe and that I forgive myself and all of the stuff that, you know, they tell you in therapy. But being able to physically integrate with something like yoga or physically integrate with something like Yoni steaming, it makes it more real. It allows my body to integrate all of the things that my mind is trying to tell it.
Right. That's so cool. I love how you've made that connection. And I feel like a lot of people are going to benefit from this. And I'm hoping a lot of people are able to find you after this and you can teach everybody all this good stuff. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
is there anything else that you would like to share with our listeners before we wrap up?
Yeah. You know, for safety is important. I highly recommend consulting a facilitator like me or someone who is knowledgeable about steaming. That way they can create a customizable plan for you based on your individual needs. You know, there are some people who shouldn't steam at all. Like if you are pregnant, if you're currently spotting or bleeding, if you have super short cycles, you know, steaming can actually, you know, make those worse because it increases your circulation and blood flow. And if you have like a burning itch or an active infection, so those conditions we don't want to steam. But there's other conditions that would need modifications, like if you have an IUD or some type of heat sensitivity or other type of medical sensitivity. So that's why I always recommend working with someone who is knowledgeable before raiding your kitchen cabinet.
Right, because like I was asking you because I know somebody that struggles with herpes outbreaks sometimes, and so in my mind I would think, oh, steaming's great, but you were like, well, according to Ayurveda, it is great, but you said something about the heat.
Yes, that's a traditional Chinese medicine principle of excess heat. So in someone typically who would have herpes, if there's an active infection, we probably want to avoid steaming and adding the additional heat. If they are in a state where they're not having an active outbreak, we would want to shorten that steam session. So you wouldn't want to steam for 30 minutes. You know, that's too much heat. So you would want to do a shorter session to still get the benefits of the steam. You're still going to get the benefits.
Right.
But you don't want to do too much to where you're adding too much heat to the body and inadvertently potentially causing an outbreak.
Right. So you can still get the benefits and have help with your menstrual cycle without instigating something else.
Absolutely.
So that was like something, you know, I never would have thought about that. You know, I might have suggested this to my friend and been like, oh, you should do this. But talking to you made me feel a lot more confident, and just doing the outtake form, you know, made me think about it all differently. Like, oh, I guess this is a symptom. You know, because we're just like so disconnected. We get used to discomfort and all that. You forget that, okay, maybe this is technically not how it should be. Like, this isn't normal necessarily. So, and
you absolutely still do get the benefit. You know, when I started steaming, I had an IUD. I did 10-minute steams. That's it. 10 minutes, not a second over. And I still got the benefits. It still radically changed my life. And then 6 months after steaming, I had my IUD removed. And now I'm able to do longer ones because...
Right. So on average, like the first one is shorter, right? Like
the first one is shorter. And the reason for that is we want to make sure that there are no adverse reactions to the heat and no adverse reactions to the herbs. So we'll always do a shorter session first to just kind of test the waters Literally.
Right. Okay.
And then, after that, depending on, your individual needs, you could potentially go longer. Like you can steam for 30 minutes now if you want to.
Right. Yeah, I was happy to have my first round with you. And then I was like, well, if anything weird happens, I can just message her and she'll calm me down and help me realize I'm not crazy. Because I did one time someone like was afraid and they were like, yeah, my friend did it and she would it made her bleed and all that. But like you gave me the heads up that sometimes that happens, but that might have that didn't happen to me. But if it had, that might have scared me away from doing it again, so I feel like working with you was so important. I probably would have never done it, honestly, if I didn't have the support.
Yeah.
And it's not like you can just like talk to your OB/GYN about it. They're probably not going to give you the best advice.
There are physicians that are steam friendly. I don't have a list of them off the top of my head, but if you want steam friendly physician resources, let me know. I can direct you to those. But yeah, if a doctor is not taught about it in medical school, most likely they are going to dissuade you from trying something due to liability.
Exactly. And it's not like they can write you a prescription for the herbs that you need to.
No.
They can't. So like that's where you come into play, and you're very well versed in this herb for that. And and that's not always intuitive for people, so having someone that's an expert in that way is so valuable, and it's worth the money. And I just feel like you're so great to work with and
Thank
friendly,
you.
and I don't feel weird talking about my vagina with you, which like that's important. It's important to feel like comfortable with a person that you're about to do this, and like safe, like being like, well, I'm bleeding now. Is this normal? So
yeah, I always try to, level set expectations. These are things that could happen. So if somebody has super short cycles, or if it's close to the time when you're supposed to start your period, then yes, it can cause bleeding. So that's why the consultation is important, so we can talk about it and we can figure out a plan for what's going to work out best.
Right. All right. Could you share with our listeners the best way to follow you or contact you for a consultation?
Yeah. On Facebook, Tranquil Heart Holistic. Or if you go to Instagram and go to Tranquil Heart 7, like the number 7, there's a whole bunch of links in my bio to my website, my email, the socials. There's a study on 4th trimester steaming. And there's also a quiz for how to find the perfect menstrual cup.
Okay. So you teach all sorts of like health, vaginal health stuff too.
Yeah, and I'm going to keep going. I want to do a doula training next. So, like my grandfather always used to say, learn all you can while you can. So I'm just going to keep learning all the things.
Right. And you seem passionate about it. And so I always tell people, like, if something ignites you and doesn't bore you, then that's the road you need to go. If you're like studying for a career and you cannot keep your eyes open, like while you're reading the book, then that might not be it. Like follow what excites you. And that's different for everybody. So
yeah, I really think that, people should know that this should be considered as an option.
Right.
Before, committing to hormonal birth control or surgery for something like cramps. Right. Of course, I recommend, doing what your doctor thinks is important that you should do. But this is a feasible option for just run-of-the-mill cramps.
Right. Give it a try.
Right. Worst case scenario, it doesn't work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you're in Knoxville, so you can travel to people right now?
Yeah, I can travel up to 30 minutes outside of Knoxville.
Okay.
Or I have reconfigured my basement space. It's a finished basement. It's not like a creepy cinder block basement. So yeah, I can see clients there. Or I'm also seeing clients in Maryville at Allenwick from time to time.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing this sacred wisdom with us.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Yes, we're honored to have you. So, all right. Thank you, and thank you all for tuning in. Check us out next time on the Astral Hour.